All right, let's just get right into it. Have you ever looked around and thought, man, life feels so much more expensive than it did a few years ago? Well, you're not imagining it. But what we're going to talk about today is that it's not just the stuff you see in the headlines. It's actually about these really subtle shifts in what we all consider a normal life.
I mean, this is the question, right? Why does life feel so expensive? You look at your bank account, you see the money coming in, and then you see it all going out, and you're just left scratching your head, wondering, where did it even go? How did just living get so pricey?
And it's so easy to just point the finger at inflation. And look, that's a huge part of it for sure. The rising cost of, well, everything is very real. But the source material for this whole breakdown suggests there's something else going on, something kind of sneakier happening in our day-to-day lives. And here it is, the big idea. We've quietly, without really noticing, normalized a whole bunch of incredibly expensive habits. We started treating them not like luxuries, but like they're just the basic cost of being a modern adult. So let's break down exactly what those habits are.
So, first up, the price of comfort. And this is all about what we're willing to pay just to avoid even the tiniest little inconveniences.
I mean, just think about your own life for a second. We pay extra to have food show up at our door. Same for groceries. We'll grab a ride share instead of walking a few blocks. We outsource basic errands or pay for little apps to automate simple tasks. Look, none of these things are a huge deal on their own, right? But you add them all up, and you've built a life where you are constantly paying to get out of doing tiny bits of effort.
And this gets at a really interesting shift in our mindset. Convenience isn't a nice-to-have thing anymore. It's become the baseline we expect. We're essentially training ourselves to just throw money at any friction in our lives instead of, building up a little tolerance for things like waiting or planning ahead or just cooking a meal.
And this really lays out the two different paths, doesn't it? On one side, you can build up that friction tolerance. Yeah, it takes a little patience and effort, but it also makes you more competent in your own life and obviously saves you a ton of money. The other path, you just buy your way out of the friction. It feels so much easier in the moment, but over time, it just creates this expensive dependency.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about how this all plays out in our social lives. Because it turns out that simply seeing our friends and family has become a surprisingly expensive habit.
You know that feeling? We treat the weekend like it's this big reward for surviving a tough week. But that whole reward mindset creates this pressure, this need to make every weekend memorable, an outing. And suddenly, a quiet weekend just chilling at home can start to feel like you're failing, like you're missing out on something.
So where do all these outings happen? Well, more and more, they happen in places that require you to pull out your wallet. Think about it. Meeting for coffee, grabbing drinks, going to brunch, dinner. These have become the default settings for just connecting with other people. Your conversation now comes with a menu and a bill attached.
And this quote from the source material just nails it. You're no longer just buying food. You're renting your social life. When the only places you see people are places you have to pay to be in, you are, basically, paying rent on your relationships, one transaction at a time. Wow.
So what's the end result of all this? We get to a place where free social activities, like just going for a walk or having people over or meeting in a park, can start to feel, well, kind of weird or boring or like you're just not putting in enough effort. And that is a really powerful and really expensive social change.
All right, our next section is a big one. It's about the money we spend not just on living our lives, but on the image of our lives. Let's talk about the burden of image.
The classic example here is the car, right? So many of us are driving way more car than we actually need for our day-to-day. We pay for more power, more features, more status. It's not really about getting from A to B anymore. It's about paying for a story you tell yourself. And that story sends you a bill every single month. And this leads to a fascinating concept that modern life encourages us to fund a whole cast of characters, not just one person. It's like we're not just us anymore. We're expected to curate and maintain all these different versions of ourselves. And guess what? Each one of them costs money. And here's what that looks like in real life. It's like your wallet is funding multiple people. There's the fitness you who needs the gym membership, the gear, the supplements. There's the social you with all the dinners and drinks.
The stylish you, the hobbyist you, the skincare you, each one seems totally reasonable by itself, but when you're funding the whole ensemble cast, the total cost just gets kind of lost in the noise.
And here's another trap we fall into, and it's a sneaky one. We start copying the normal of people who are richer than us. You hang around people with a bit more money, and suddenly the restaurants they go to, the trips they take, that starts to feel like the new baseline. You adopt their normal, but you don't have their income to back it up.
Okay, we're at our final section, and this one really ties everything together. We're going to talk about a habit that feels so productive, but is often one of the most deceptive expenses out there. Let's call it the tax on optimism.
So what is this? Well, paying for optimism is when you buy things because of the person you hope that thing will turn you into. It's buying a fancy planner, or new workout gear, or expensive cooking gadgets. Not for the person you are right now, but for that idealized better version of yourself you imagine you'll become once you own the thing.
And this cycle is so easy to fall into. It starts with that little spark of motivation. I'm gonna change. Then you go out and buy a symbol of that change. And you get this little rush from the purchase, right? It feels like you've already made progress. But then you don't actually change the underlying routine. The real work doesn't get done. And before you know it, you're right back at step one.
And this right here is the heart of the problem. We mistake the preparation for the transformation. Buying the running shoes feels like you went for a run. Buying the beautiful cookbook feels like you learned to cook. The purchase itself becomes a substitute for doing the actual, sometimes boring, day-in, day-out work that creates real change.
And that really leaves us with this final, powerful question to ask ourselves. When you're making these kinds of purchases, are you really investing in a better future? Or are you just renting the feeling? Are you buying the tools to support a change you're actually committed to? Or are you just paying for a temporary hit of optimism? It's definitely something to think